Welcome to the June 25th, 2018 meeting of the Shawnee City Council. I'd ask that you please silence your electronic devices at this time. I am Mayor Michelle Dissler. I will be chairing this meeting. I will do a roll call at this time. Councilmember Zimmerman.
Present.
Councilmember Neighbor.
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins.
Present.
Councilmember Kemling.
Present.
Councilmember Meyer.
Present.
Councilmember Adrian.
Present.
Councilmember Sandifer and Councilmember Constance are both absent. Thank you. And if I saw some scouts in the audience, if you want to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Remove the flag.
You'll be all right.
I'm like, where? Yeah. You ready? When you're ready. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, would you like to introduce yourselves to everyone and tell us what troop you're with? All right, well,
We're the
thank you
Cub
so
Scout
much.
We're going.
Next, I'll explain our procedures for public input. During the meeting, I will offer the opportunity for public input. If you would like to speak to the council at any of those times, please come forward to the microphone. I'll ask you to state your name and address for the record, then you may offer your comments. So that members of the audience can hear your comments, I would ask that you speak directly into the microphone. By policy, comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no person may speak more than twice to any one agenda item. After you're finished, please sign the form on the podium to ensure we have an accurate record of your name and address. In addition, while we won't do a roll call vote on every vote, I will state council members' names who vote in minority so that our listening audience will have a clear and accurate record of the vote. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Does anyone have an item they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is mayor's items. Tonight, the City Council and I would like to recognize those who participated in Shawnee Shine Up. I'd like to ask Volunteer Coordinator Elizabeth Griffith to join me at the microphone. This month of May is Shawnee Shine Up, where our volunteers have spent hours sprucing up Shawnee. Some of those were our tried and true volunteers, but we also have had several new faces as well. Volunteers can be seen working on projects more than half of the days in all of May. So next time you're out and about, look for cleaner streams, stormwater systems, parks, and streets. The City of Shawnee, this governing body, and all of our employees want to express our gratitude and appreciation for your contributions to our community. When you hear your name, please come up and accept your certificate and stay for a picture. We will have a large group picture in the lobby after all of the certificates have been given out. And just a few numbers, nearly 187.5 hours were given by 135 individuals helping with litter pickups in parks, creeks, and along roads as an individual or as part of a group. One project was a beautification project through our Neighbors Helping Neighbors program where there were physical limitations due to age or disability. It can request the help of volunteers for common homeowner tasks. Several of the groups who participated in Shawnee Shine Up have chosen to continue their service through our volunteer Adopt a Spot program, a fabulous outcome in addition to the cleanliness of our city. Many of the groups were existing Adopt a Spot groups, but 9 are new. So if you'll join me up front, Elizabeth.
That's right. Yeah, so this is the. I see where you get today.
Mine's on.
Mine was working.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next item I have for tonight is to discuss policy statement number 7, PS7, conduct of a public meeting. I had a few questions on the policy that was passed and just want to make sure we tighten up any language that we might need to tighten up. And knowing Lindsay was going to be out, I did have the conversation with her as well. So, because I think everybody is in agreement that it's a policy of circumstance and not convenience. And so the one thing I had, it says there's no limit to the number of times a council member can participate remotely in a special call meeting. Kind of trying to think through why is there no limit on that? And could it possibly hurt the fact that, so a recent example that I would think of would be the Westbrook property. So while we were at the chamber lunch, we were discussing, trying to decide whether or not we were going to call a special call meeting before the auction that very afternoon. So there was no way of giving the 24 hours notice. And if the majority of the council has to head back to work, who makes the decision of who gets to use this and who doesn't? And if there's no limit, it also kind of, whereas if Matt had used, if there's a limit of 1 or 2 and he had used his 2, well, then we know he can't, he's got to physically be there. Or so what should we do about that? Because like I said, in that situation, there was no 24-hour notice. It was a last-minute decision of whether or not we were going to have a special call to bid on that auction of that property. Councilmember Meyer.
Any old thing,
Ms.
that's fine.
Councilmember.
You. I'll just weigh in and feel free to correct me. I think that was, if I remember correctly, that was a part of the reason why we decided not to put a limit on it, was because it is kind of a last minute nature thing and folks could have other plans that were already scheduled or work conflicts or, what have you. So this would give you the opportunity, because it is kind of a last minute thing, to still weigh in and be a part of that conversation.
So I guess my question is, what if 5 council members need to get back to work that day? Would, at that point, who makes the decision of who has to be present and who doesn't? Or do we just say we don't have a quorum and we just call it done? Any thought, Councilmember Zimmerman? Mr. Councilmember. Okay. Mr. Jenkins?
Yeah, if we limit the call-ins, I think we could limit those to regularly scheduled meetings rather than special call meetings. I wouldn't see necessarily putting a limit on somebody for a special call meeting, because those are for our convenience. They're not necessarily one that's are prepared in advance, the public's in full attendance and that sort of thing. So I kind of like to differentiate between the two, if we could, and treat them differently. And I would not have a problem with setting some sort of limit on regularly scheduled meetings, because I don't want to encourage people to not show up for those meetings by saying, no, I'm just going to stay home and do it on my computer. So a limit on that would be appropriate. A limit on special call meetings, I don't think we should do that, because we really just limiting ourselves then as a governing body trying to accomplish maybe some very important business.
Right, but the policy conflicts itself in that we say to be remote, you have to give 24-hour notice. The Westbrook meeting, there was not 24 hours notice. And logistically, how would we get whatever information to which council members?
See or something like that, hey, we need to do something, and we don't have 24-hour notice. So I would say keep those separate and apart from each other. So for regularly scheduled meetings, I think it's very appropriate for somebody to let you know they're not going to be able to attend, and it would be on computer or phone or however we set that up. But the other ones, it's just crazy to limit them, because then we're just limiting ourselves, like I say. And if we have something very important to do, we need to just make it available to ourselves to be able to utilize it.
Okay, and can we make that work logistically as far as getting that council member the information if it's last minute?
I think so. Getting the conference room set up.
And what about anything that's being presented or?
As long as the person had, access to
Right. Okay, so then, I'll get you in just 1 second. So, sorry, I'm just following up with a question. So then, with that being said, as a governing body, do you want a governing body member to be able to participate and vote on items that they don't have access to all of the information? Mr. Neighbor?
I think with you've raised some questions, and I think we need to, rather than talk about it here, because I do not have it in front of me. I don't have any information in front of me. I can look at here. I think we need to, I would suggest, put this back to committee on the item you talked about, and so we can talk about it, clarify it, and ask for Mr. Rainey and things. I do remember very much the day when the bid came up on Westbrook. That was a scramble, and it's a darn good thing we did it. We need to be able to have, I think, the flexibility to respond, and I would hate to see something in words handcuff us in a time we need to react. And as I agree with what Eric said, in a time of emergency, it's where we get the $1.07 an hour, big bucks to, to make the decisions, and that's what these folks expect.
Right. And my concern, like I said, it's just do you want people to, just as you said just now, you don't have it in front of you. If they don't have information in front of them, do you want them to be able to participate and vote without having the information that the present body would have? It's doable. He might, but if it can't, then what do you want to do as a governing body? So yes, if Stephen can make it work and it all works, then that works. But if we cannot get the information in front of the remote people, do we want to allow them to participate and vote without having the information?
If you do not allow them to vote for that reason, then you are disenfranchising the 16,000 people in their ward.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes, I do say it potentially it being somewhat situational for the topic we're dealing with. If it's a rather deep and complex subject with a lot of written information that's not available to the person on the outside, if it's more of a discussion, like and somebody's presenting, here's the situation we need you guys to get back to us on and give us a yay or a nay, and then it's just explained, well, it's pretty much the same thing that we're getting sitting here as they would be getting there. And if it's a situation where this has got a whole lot of backup documentation and it needs to be studied at some length, of course, that's kind of hard to do in an emergency meeting anyway. You get right down to if you're in that kind of situation. So, yeah, I agree with Jen that maybe we need to just take it back and flesh it out more fully in the council committee meeting. It would be very helpful, Mayor, if you would specifically write down your concerns so they can be considered in the council meeting, and we can address each one of those and make sure it's comprehensive when we get back to here again.
Okay, yeah, and so then that was one of my other questions. It doesn't necessarily have to be an emergency meeting. So under C number 2, it says the city will make reasonable accommodations to provide remote participants with copies of materials used during the meeting, such as handouts, presentations, et cetera. So again, that same question would be posed, even not an emergency situation. Again, if that cannot happen, do you want to allow them to participate without having the information? It's just a question. I feel like we need to tighten up the language. It's your guys' decision to make as far as the policy, but to me, there's just some questions that are unanswered of the what if. Mr. Jenkins?
I think it's a very good point, because in some meetings, particularly in one where it's a contentious one, where perhaps there's a group that's identified themselves that want to come and present their side of it, we may or may not have access to that information prior to the meeting, and it'd be difficult to do that remotely to really get the gist of what's being presented by those people. So you can see situations where that would occur. I don't know if that'd be a common situation, but it's certainly a potential problem.
Any comments on that? Or okay, so another question I had under B4, it says B5, remote participants may an executive session. Ellis had said that we could allow that even without it being in the policy, like the recent situation that we had. So do we want to make it part of the policy where it's an expectation versus an exception for when something happens?
I'm digesting that conclusion.
Again, I go
Neighbor.
back, I support what Eric said. Please write down your concerns,
I will.
because the fact that this passed committee 7-0, it passed the council 6-0, everybody was obviously comfortable with it when it went by the governing body. You obviously have some concerns, and I'm sure the governing body would be welcome to consider them
Yeah.
at a committee meeting sometime when we can hash it out.
Because unfortunately, I'm not allowed to participate in the committee meetings. So this is the only avenue I have to bring up my questions. I did try to bring them up for the council meeting, but I think it kind of got lost in translation of the stuff that I was trying to ask, because I listened to the full discussion, but none of the stuff was really addressed. So I take total blame for that. But I couldn't participate in the discussion. And then at the council meeting, I had tried to write my concerns, and I think that kind of got lost in the translation. So this was the only avenue I have to bring up my questions. And so on B4, though, it says remote participants must be fully present for the entire meeting that is open to the public. So what happens if they do get disconnected and cannot reconnect?
If they don't participate, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can't fix it.
okay,
They're just gone if they get off.
okay. Yes,
It does say in 5 that
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
right. And I see that, but then that earlier language is contradictory in that it says they must be fully present for the entire meeting. So does that language need to be changed then? Because these two statements contradict each other. Mr. Jenkins?
And I don't see why that would negate any votes that have already been made and so on. I mean, you could be getting toward the end of the agenda around miscellaneous or something, and oops, we lost one. That shouldn't negate any votes they've already taken at that point, because they're on record, and they were in attendance and all that. So at that point, it wouldn't be reflected on any further business on the agenda.
Right, and I don't at all see an issue with the current council, but, you know, as I've said before, when we do policy, it should never be thinking of the current council or the current mayor or the current city manager. I remember Mayor Myers at one time, there was a policy, and he's like, well, it doesn't matter, I'm never going to do that anyway. It's like, well, if you're never going to do it, it shouldn't be in the policy. So it's kind of one of those things, and it's kind of like with the executive session thing, because I feel like, you know, we're walking on thin ice. That's always very sensitive information. So that was one of my questions. If we are going to allow executive sessions and not have to be, what's the word I'm thinking, of circumstance, do we need to add to the policy that they need to make a statement of assurance that they are alone? Because that's currently not required.
The executive session, that would be significant.
Yeah. My personal feelings, I don't really like the idea of executive session unless it is for a circumstance, but in just my thoughts of trying to protect the city, you know, and thinking of situations to where, you know, what if you have a council member that is present most of the meeting and then accidentally disconnects when there's a controversial vote to be made. So I'm just thinking of past, I'm thinking of what potential future could be. I'm not thinking in regards to the current council. I don't see that we would have anyone currently sitting here that we'd have any issues with, but I just want the policy to make sure that it protects the city from all future councils. Mr. Adrian.
Would it be possible if you could draft up your version of the policy and then we can discuss this in committee? Would that be possible?
That, or yeah, I can add my questions, whatever it is you want me to do. Like I said, it kind of got lost in translation last time, so that makes me a little nervous.
Sure. That's why I think if it's written how you see it could possibly be, then we can kind of merge it together possibly.
Ms. Meyer?
Yeah, I think what Councilmember Adrian said would be helpful too, just because I wasn't quite sure what we were discussing with this item. So now wrapping my mind around all of these changes without necessarily having in front of me what the proposal is a little bit tough for me. So I think if we're able to kick it back to committee and then you can put together kind of what your thoughts are so that we've made sure that that's all outlined and we can discuss it, then that might be helpful, at least for me anyway, when considering it.
Right. And I think that's kind of the same point, is that if the stuff can't be in front of the person that's remote, it's kind of the same thing. It's hard to discuss it. So those were my questions in regards of just tightening up some of the verbiage of the policy to protect the city in the future. So I will type something up, and I appreciate you guys reconsidering it. Do we need any type of motion since it automatically goes into effect tonight if we don't do something? Okay. Okay. So does Mr. Jenkins?
If you're ready for a motion, I would
Sure.
move to temporarily suspend the revisions to policy statement 7 until a further review is conducted in the council committee.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you for your consideration. Next item is E, business from the floor. Is there anyone who has comments on an issue that is not on tonight's agenda? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Larry Nichols, 6703 Hauser Drive, Shawnee, Kansas. Madam Mayor, Council, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight to respond to some comments that I read in the media online here a few weeks ago about the Shawnee Days Parade and Mr. Kobach's Jeep with the black rifle or black machine gun on top. And evidently some people were offended by that. And what bothers me is evidently the city's response. Now, I'm only going by what I read in the paper. I haven't seen anything to dispute that, so please correct me if these are wrong. But it says the City of Shawnee, Old Shawnee Days Board, and the Old Shawnee Days Society apologized Saturday afternoon after Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach rode down the parade route in a Jeep with a large gun mounted on the back, alarming many bystanders. I've been a lot of parades in this city that had all sorts of weapons and guns. I didn't hear anybody being offended. Then it said that we want to apologize for the concern and frustration involved. In no way does this or any parade entry directly reflect the views and values of the city. Again, we apologize and understand the concerns this caused. Please know that the safety of our residents is always our highest priority. We will be taking steps in the future to try to ensure something similar does not happen again. What steps can you take to prevent somebody from exercising their First Amendment rights to support the Second Amendment? I went to Shawnee Mission High School. I graduated in 1957. It's now Northwest. I'm surprised I'm alive today. Any day of the week at that high school, you could walk out into the parking lot and find anywhere from 1 to probably 10 or 12 pickup trucks with long guns and the back rifle. And in 4 years of attendance, not one time did anybody use one of those weapons in a threatening manner or to shoot somebody or to even bring it into school and for any reason. We didn't even know what a resource officer was. We didn't have the problem. I don't think the guns are the problem. I was taught in the civics class, I got a copy of the Constitution and the amendments, the Bill of Rights. I didn't see any place in there where the citizens have a right not to be offended. And I am upset that anybody connected with the city would apologize to people who say they were offended for somebody else exercising their constitutional rights. But it really doesn't offend me. It terrifies me. It terrifies me that anybody connected with this city would consider passing a rule or a regulation or an ordinance that says you don't have a right to show your support for this a Second Amendment of the Constitution. I was taught in civics class, when they taught civics, that the purpose of the reason the framers of the Constitution put the Second Amendment in place was to protect the First Amendment. And I would oppose any steps at all to prevent Mr. Kobach or anybody else from doing that again. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to let you know, the city legally cannot prevent that.
I'm sorry, could you speak a little louder?
The city legally cannot prevent that. There was the statement that was made that you're reading, but the city cannot prevent that. And it was a misstatement that we could take any steps to control that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other comments, business from the floor? Seeing none. Next item is public items. Item number 1 is the presentation of the 2017 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. The city's financial statements and operations were audited by Berberic Tram and Company, PA, for 2017. Stacy Hammond is here from the audit firm and will make a short presentation about their findings. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the results of the City of Shawnee's annual financial statement audit. I think everyone has received as a handout a report to the City Council of the City of Shawnee, and that report sets out items that our audit standards require us to present as conclusions related to the city's annual audit. The first thing that I'm required to talk about is our responsibilities in performing the audit. We are responsible for performing the city's audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States, the provisions of the Single Audit Act, uniform guidance, Office of Management and Budget's compliance supplement, and the Kansas Municipal Audit and Accounting Guide. That's a lot of different standards. Those standards require us to perform procedures in order to obtain assurance about whether the city's financial statements are free of material misstatement. Our procedures include examining, on a test basis, evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements. We also examine the accounting principles used and the significant estimates made by management of the city, as well as evaluating the overall financial statement presentation. The most important thing that I'm going to say tonight is that as a result of performing all of those procedures, we determined that the financial statements of the city are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And therefore, we issued what we call an unmodified audit opinion, and that is the best kind of opinion that the city of Shawnee can receive. In the accounting policies and practices section of the report to the City Council, we would bring to your attention anything that we identified in the procedures that we performed related to new accounting standards, changes in accounting principles, or any significant or unusual transactions. There's nothing that I'm required to report in any of those areas, except that the city did adopt one new accounting standard during the year, and that standard was Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 75, titled Accounting and Financial Reporting by Employers for Post-Employment Benefits Other Than Pensions. This new standard required the city to change the way that it measures its other post-employment benefit liability, and it also added several pages of footnote disclosures to your financial statements. Moving on to this significant accounting estimates section of the report to the City Council, we are required to bring to your attention that the city does have several significant accounting estimates. Those significant accounting estimates are your net pension liabilities associated with your supplemental pension plan, CAPERS and KPNF, the city's other post-employment benefits liability, and the fair value of investments. Our job as auditors is to analyze the process that the city has in place for measuring and recording these accounting estimates. As a result of our work, we were able to determine that the city's estimates appear reasonable and appropriately reported. There were several audit adjustments that we recorded during our audit, and those are summarized at the very back of the report to the City Council. I would like you to note that these are entries that were prepared by city staff and given to us during the audit, or the city gave us information in order to record those entries. The majority of those entries are reclassing items so that we can move information around to get it in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles to produce the report to GFOA, or for entity-wide entries to report activity that the city isn't able to carry on its accounting system due to certain limitations of the city's accounting system, activity related to capital assets and debt, for instance. Those entries are not a reflection of any deficiencies in internal control or anything like that. I did want to point that out, that the city gives us the information to record those entries. In the final sections of the report to the City Council, we would bring to your attention anything bad that might have happened during the audit, if we had any disagreements with management, any significant consultations, or any significant difficulties that we might have encountered. I'm pleased to report that nothing came up in any of those areas. The city was very transparent in answering all of the questions that we had during our audit, and there were a lot of questions that we had as first-time auditors. And the city was very well prepared to answer all of our questions. Another thing that I would like to point out is that if the city had had any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls, those would be listed and explained in this report to the City Council. There are none. That's why you don't see any information related to that in this report. Finally, after the report to the City Council, there is a letter that's on the city's letterhead with a bunch of numbered items on it. That is what we call in the accounting world the management's representation letter. And that letter sets forth all of the items that the city management represented to us throughout the course of the audit. And when the city signs that letter and gives it back to us, that's a sign that the audit's ready to be finalized. We like governing bodies to be able to see that representation letter so that you know what management did represent to us throughout the course of the audit. And we think that it helps you to fulfill your fiduciary responsibilities to see that letter as well. Finally, I would like to thank Maureen and Debbie and Shelley for their hard work in preparing for the audit. This was the first year that Burbridge Trahan performed the audit of the City of Shawnee, and the finance staff of the City of Shawnee spent a really significant amount of time documenting internal controls for us and answering a number of questions, that we had during the audit. Throughout that entire process, they were extremely professional and well prepared, and we greatly appreciate that, and it made it a pleasure for us to work on this audit. So thank you. And at this point, I'd like to open it up to any questions that anyone might have.
Anyone have any questions? No, they do a great job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. This item was for informational purposes only. Item number 1 is to consider closing city offices on December 24th, 2018. In the past, the governing body has approved closing city facilities on December 24th and allowing employees the option to take a vacation day or a day off without pay. In 2018, Christmas Eve falls on a Monday, and the official city holiday will be on Tuesday, December 25th. Staff recommends closing city facilities on December 24th, 2018. The recommended action is to consider closing city offices on December 24th, 2018, and allowing employees the option to use accrued vacation time or time without pay, and providing police and fire personnel the opportunity to take a day without pay on another day. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion.
Move approval.
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous items. Item number 1 is to ratify the semi-monthly claims for June 25th, 2018 in the amount of $3,622,748.56. Is there any discussion from the council? Anyone from the audience like to speak to this item? I'll accept a motion.
Move for approval?
Motion's been made and seconded on this item. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 2 is miscellaneous council items. Does anyone on the council have an item they would like to discuss? Mr. Neighbor.
Yes, we received an email this afternoon from Chief Mosier. The Citizen Police Academy is taking reservations. That is something put on by the police academy. The police. And you go 2 Thursdays a month for 4 months. And I did it a number of years ago, and it is an excellent, excellent program to learn what our police department, you see them driving around getting donuts that's the fire department. These guys, it's what they go through, the training go through and everything, and you get to get a little bit of what they do, and then after you go through the program and graduate, they do have a volunteer program, and many of the people you see at the functions are graduates of this that turn into volunteers and help out with the police and many of the functions. So just have them call the non-emergency police line if you're interested and get enrolled, unless you want to.
You can enroll online.
Okay.
You can go online.
Mr. Jenkins?
Just another miscellaneous item. I just wanted to extend my appreciation to our Public Works folks. Doug, thank you for dealing with some of the issues I've been throwing at you lately. There's a couple cases there that were a little sticky, really, and then you handled them extremely well. There's that balancing act between being good to our citizens and trying to serve their needs, but also trying to defend the position where the city has to. There's certain things we can and cannot do, and like I say, that's a tough issue. But I appreciate your efforts in that regard. And thank you, Nolan, as well, for participating in that.
Thank you. Any other council items? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you.